So this is a quick overview of what the storylines and what my presentation would look like. So first part is the introduction to OKRs. And the idea is that OKRs are going to appeal to each of you in a different way, almost like that proverb of the 8 blind people and the elephant. Depending on where you are in the organization, OKRs bring a different benefit to your organization. But it's all about the topics we just heard about. It's about being agile, about the ability to translate strategy into action. It's getting rid of the hierarchical structures we have in organizations and allow everyone to operate in a consistent and aligned fashion. Now, these concepts aren't new. Back in 1966, Drucker wrote a number of papers that talked about management by objectives, or MBOs, that you probably heard about. And the work I was involved with in Harvard in the late 90s was all about translating that MBO work into something more contemporary called the Balanced Scorecard. And OKRs are just taking the work that we did and updating it again for where we are these days. Now, where are we these days? What's happened since the 1960s? Well, a bunch of things that are obvious. One is we've got way more data. Back in Drucker's days, we'd be lucky if we could get annual statements. Back when I was doing my research at Harvard on the Balanced Scorecard, we would get maybe quarterly financials, whereas now you get them, there's just such an abundance of data. And the data we get is more frequent. Literally, moment by moment, we can have real-time information across our organizations. We have way better management practices than we had before. We've been developing things like Lean, Six Sigma, Agile, and those practices are much more abundant these days. We've got a much faster pace of business. Back when I started consulting in the 1980s, we used to do 5-year plans for our clients. Well, the uncertainty that we used to have out 5 years, we now have out 1 year. In other words, my old 5-year plan is my 1-year plan. That means my 1-year plan is now my 1-quarter plan. And then finally, we've got a much better skill set in our workforce. We can absorb way more information and make decisions on it. And so a lot of what we're now dealing with is just that modernization. And this modernization is happening on a global basis. We're dealing with clients these days in Seoul and Saudi Arabia, at Oman and Bangladesh. Like everywhere, organizations are moving at this speed. So what are OKRs? Well, they're a principle that you've probably experienced many times in your career. Somehow or the other, we have to take an organization's long-term vision and cascade that down to what is it we need to do this year to achieve that 5-year goal. And then with that 1-year goal, what do I need to do this quarter to achieve those things? And of course, what would I see more of or less of as I moved on those objectives? What are the key results I would see? And from that, what are the activities I need to do? In other words, I'm taking that long-term strategy and breaking it down to this year and 5 years out, down to this quarter and 5 quarters out, down to today and 5 days out. So just bringing that down. And the term OKRs come from that idea of this quarterly cadence of objectives and key results. Now, some of our clients have totally perfected this. Clients like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn are using these to just dynamically change how those industries perform. And how's that happen? Well, it gives us that top-down, bottom-up cycle of management. We should be able to set our strategy and cascade it down the organization and make sure that the organization has the capacity to do it, at least in our hypothesis. And then the green arrow, prove that we can do so. Feed that back up and make sure that we can actually achieve those benefits. And if not, adjust our strategy in real time. Not wait till the end of the year or even the end of the quarter. If you think about it, last year with COVID, you really had about 6 different strategies during the year. You had what was going on, business as usual, January, February. Suddenly in March, we have a different strategy with lockdown. April, a different strategy again as we begin to work through work from home. June and July as things begin to unlock a bit. So many of our clients went through this strategy circle 6 or 7 times last year, and they're the ones that gained market share. So what do the mechanics look like? It's straightforward. It's a verb, noun, key result, target, and date. I'll give you an example. Think of a call center, right, for supporting software. So overall, their goal is to increase productivity, right? That's the objective. Key result, they're going to measure that by cycle time, right? Obviously, on the productivity question, if you're stuck with a bug, you're no longer productive. So that's what we're solving for. That's the objective. And how we're going to get there, we're going to measure the key result is call to closure cycle time. Our target is 4.5 minutes in Q1. That's it. Objective, key result. Easy. Except you need a bit more precision. In Q2, in this case, we're going to shave a bit of improvement. We're going to get it down to 4 minutes. In Q3, a miracle happens. We cut that in half, down to 2 minutes. And then another improvement in Q4. So OKRs are going to give us a little bit more precision on how we monitor success. But there's more than that. In order to get this benefit, what this call center did is began to train and certify their operators in all 10 products. So to achieve this outcome, they need support from a different department, human resources. And they're going to train and certify 2 people, all of us in 2 products by Q1, all of us in 4 products by Q2, 6 in Q3, and all 10 in Q4. One other thing, they're going to go to the IT department and get the phone switch programmed so that phone calls get routed to operators that are certified in the products that they own. And they're going to launch that in Q3. So it's the combination of IT doing their job and HR doing their job that makes this miracle happen. So what we're trying to do is catch the cross-functional nature of work in OKRs to make sure that we no longer have silos in the organization. That's all an OKR is. Now, that all seems obvious, and it is. But the key learnings are this. The key learnings are, our research way back in the 80s at Harvard told us that 80% of strategies fail because they're not executed. Execution is the critical focus. You need to give your organization tools like clear objectives and clear key results that focus our work. Secondly, we need to ensure that we have employee engagement and those employees are highly motivated. And that becomes the single highest success factor for your business. And then the final lesson is that this is not disruptive. Implementing OKRs is just leveling up what you're currently doing. You currently have a strategy. You currently have processes. You currently have employees and promotion and rewards and recognition. It's about integrating those things together so that you're executing in an aligned fashion. So that's the end of the first session. Second session is case studies. Case study number 1 is a manufacturing case study. And their story is all about migrating from the balanced scorecard, what they've been using for 20 or 30 years, to the more modern version of OKRs. And the example we're going to use is Frederick Industries. Frederick makes a pipe. They're a pipe bender. And these pipes are used in our oil fields for heat transfer. They're used inside buildings for putting electrical and fire equipment. And they're even used as structural elements for some buildings. They've got about 450 employees across 3 production facilities, and they sell across North America. Now, their issue that was emerging is a couple of things. One is just employee engagement. Second biggest issue was international competitors. They needed to be more agile in the marketplace to get away from a lot of things that are happening in Asia. Management's also complaining about the endless meetings that they had and how unproductive they were. I mean, no one goes to work going, oh boy, I've got a meeting today. What a great thing. But it should be that way. And then finally, rapidly changing markets, that the application for their products were moving all over the place. And so they needed to somehow or the other, net, become more agile. We took them through a 5-step process, literally in 5 days. Monday, we captured their strategy. Tuesday, we aligned that to each of the core departments. Wednesday, we wrote up what are their objectives and key results. Thursday, we put it into a system of record. And Friday, we turned it on. That was it. What did they get from it? Well, the 2 biggest things after 6 months were sales went up by 20%. That was an unintended consequence. They found that productivity went up by 21%, which is what we expected and what we were aiming for. But they had a bunch of other benefits too. People were more productive. They had higher customer satisfaction. They had fewer quality problems. They had lower absenteeism, lower employee turnover, both in the white collar and the B2B side of things. They had less shrinkage off the shop floor and 70% fewer safety incidents. Impressive. Case study number 2 is a service company. And they're an interesting story because this story started in March of last year, and they've just been thriving through the pandemic. Now, what's interesting is Trained supports about 1,300 companies with about 135,000 employees with all their IT, cloud, that kind of thing. And when the pandemic hit, they suddenly found that they had, 135,000 employees, every employee of every client they had, and they needed to shift to work from home literally over a weekend within 48 hours when the pandemic hit. How did they deal with that? Well, it took them a while to get going. It wasn't until 10 hours in that leadership actually met and set a new strategy. At 1,200 hours, 2 hours later, 9 departments took that corporate North Star and cascaded it down to what their departments needed to do. By 24 hours, they had assigned 1,000 IT people into completely new jobs. So literally the 9 departments changed direction. Every single employee's job changed to follow it. Complete alignment inside of 24 hours. By 36 hours, they had rewired 1,500 systems to be VPN enabled, which allowed people to work from home. And by 48 hours, they had a global lights on. So literally within 48 hours, they moved this organization from literally being bricks and mortar to literally being cloud-based. Now, how did they do that? Well, they did that by quickly setting a new strategy and setting up what were the objectives and key results at each of these levels throughout the organization. That's what they did by 1,000 hours. 2 hours later, they had cascaded that down to each department, and each department had their initiatives, their project plans, and actually began monitoring what employees were doing. By 1,800 hours, they had got literally the KPI system in place, and they began reporting on their performance on their cell phones immediately. Now, all these tools were in place. They merely had to adjust what was in them. What were the objectives? What were the key results? But everyone knew how to make this happen. What were their metrics? They're amazing. Remember, this is in the middle of the pandemic, and this is from last March to this March. They have 16% better employee performance in the pandemic. They have 125% less burnout than they had before the pandemic. They have a much higher commitment to the organization, 32% higher. They have scored their leaders as being far more effective. They've have considerably less lost work time. They have employees are much more likely to get promoted inside the business. We've seen better white collar and blue collar performance. And all of this netted in an overall significant increase in job satisfaction. And remember, this is during a pandemic. 450 people. It's amazing what happened. Final vignette is all about what OKRs offer organization. So we'll do the pyramid, quick cascade down, and then move on to nickel tour, and this is almost like shopping a la carte. No organization gets all these benefits, but you'll find 4 or 5 of these that work for you. So one is it helps organizations focus towards that aligned goal. It's all about focus. It creates that winning mindset in employees. They clearly know what winning looks like and can see that progress day to day. It promotes transparency. Now, silos no longer exist, and people have to collaborate with each other to achieve those shared objectives and those shared key results. Therefore, the organization ends up being aligned and teams become cohesive. Therefore, it drives discipline. People know what to do and can get it done. It helps people, therefore, achieve their committed and their stretch goals. At the same time, it allows us to measure our progress towards those goals, literally day to day. If you're working in accounting, how do you know when you've had a better accounting day? With OKRs, you do. Therefore, performance management becomes easier. I get rid of that annual performance review. I literally have performance conversations day to day, and if I need to talk to an employee, I might do that on a monthly basis, and it's completely archived. I know exactly what happened month on month. It increases accountability. People understand what they own and what they need to do, and therefore drives efficiency. And then finally, we all get better clarity and better direction. So again, not every organization achieves and enjoys all these benefits, but there's 2 or 3 of these in here that your organization will probably gain from as you move forward to OKRs. There you go. That's what the storyline looks like. What do you think?